These are the 7 large freight companies throughout North America. If we want to electrify freight trains across America, we're definitely going to have to take all 7 of these into consideration if we do that. Firstly though, no, I don't always wear this shirt. Okay, that's a lie. Also, secondly, you might be asking, why would we want to electrify freight lines across America? 'Cause it's cool. The answer is a lot more real than that. This is an environmental issue. We live on a planet. One planet. And then we're polluting it with diesel fumes. It's not exactly great. We're breathing that in. That goes into the atmosphere. Now let's just say electric freight trains don't do that. And if you need any more proof that climate change is a real thing, well, let me go turn on my air conditioner in mid-October because it's getting into the 80s. Here in the US, freight trains are absolutely everywhere. Chances are you live within a mile or 2 of a freight track that's in use. Urban, suburban, rural, it doesn't matter. Freight trains are everywhere, and my point is, that's a lot of diesel. I have a plan to electrify freight trains across the country. Now, I don't work for a company or anything that could possibly do this. I am literally just a guy filming a video in his bedroom, but it is something to think about. So I would start with those big 7 companies that I talked about at the very beginning, and I would slowly have them electrify their freight lines. A lot easier said than done, I know, but if you had certain cities who were willing to try it out and test it out for a bit, and gradually extend from there through some of the other more rural areas or anywhere that doesn't want to have these electric wires installed, you could gradually expand to there. Now the US is a very big country, so it is going to, again, be a lot easier said than done to do this. And if you think that's impossible, putting wires up all over all the freight tracks, well, next time you head outside, look at all of the overhead electric wires, phone wires, any of those overhead wire infrastructure that we have all across the country. It is possible. It just may not be what everybody wants. A high overhead catenary wire, tall enough to clear those excess height train cars, would be placed with AC voltage. There's already a sort of standard for electric freight trains, and it's to have 25 kilovolt AC on those wires. So the electric locomotives pulling these trains would run on 25 kilovolt AC. And there's also a special case for lowering the voltage to 12.5 kilovolts when clearance is an issue, for example, tunnels. And it would be important for these electric locomotives to be able to switch between the 25 kilovolt and 12.5 kilovolt AC, depending on the type of route that they're covering. Now, I'm no electrical expert at all, but I would imagine you could get away with powering these overhead lines by tying it to the nearest power grid. Or you could build a small, it can be very small, substation building right off of the trackway. Electric locomotives also have the benefit of regenerative braking, where you can take some of the energy that was used to propel the train forward and push it back into the substation for a train to use later on. Also, a nice added benefit is that electric locomotives have excellent pulling force and acceleration to start more quickly from a stop. Now I get it, not all areas would be suitable for this. Not all 50 states would approve of such an extreme project. So for these situations, it would be nice to have units that can run on some sort of backup fuel. The older option here is to do the good old diesel electric units, where they can run fully electrically by touching a wire just like an electric freight train should, But if you get into a certain area that doesn't have electric wires, you could kick a diesel motor on and have it run a hybrid electric train until you get to an area where you can touch the wires again and shut off the diesel motor. That wouldn't be outlawing diesel entirely, which I get would still be sort of an issue, but it would be far less than only using diesel in all freight trains nationwide. These are largely electric trains already, just with diesel fuel as well. So they do produce a lot less emissions, but then you have to remember there are a lot of freight trains in the US. Another option that's becoming increasingly more popular worldwide is the use of hydrogen to power trains. Now, I'm not 100% sure how these work, but from what I understand, the locomotives would have hydrogen fuel tanks that power a fuel cell, which is sort of like a battery. The only emissions here are heat and water vapor. That's it. So, you could still have these trains running fully electrically using electric motors and using the overhead catenary wires. So then when you get to a section where there is no overhead line, or for a US state that maybe didn't approve of this or whatever reason, then you could switch to hydrogen power as a backup. I prefer this solution over the diesel-electric hybrid version. So once that is complete, then it's time to move on to Amtrak. Now already Amtrak, mostly entirely, I think, runs on freight corridors and shares its right-of-way with other freight trains, so this shouldn't be too difficult to do. If there's any more that need to be electrified, I would start in the northeastern part of the United States, where there's already electric Amtrak trains running right now. This also opens up a huge door to high-speed rail. The only way you can do high-speed rail is through electric train travel. I am in the process of making a dedicated video on just that, so maybe in a couple months' time you will see a completed video on high-speed rail, so stay tuned for that. Now I'll link this in the description, but RM Transit recently made a video talking about high-speed rail, and he compared it to air travel. And wow, you think the emissions from a diesel train is bad? Yeah, air travel is worse. High-speed rail is electric, can carry similar, sometimes more, amounts of passengers, is far more comfortable, there's no real turbulence on a train, and check-in is much simpler. You show up to a train station and wait for a train to show up. Then you can board through multiple doors on the coaches and find your seat. I would strive to create something similar in speed to maybe HS1 in Europe, which travels at about 125 to 140 miles an hour. Now for one last thing, and this might not be a good idea, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. What if each train car in your 150-foot long freight train had air brakes? Now, ideally these would never ever get used. However, what if you needed to come to an emergency stop? You might not just want the electric locomotive coming to a stop. If you instead somehow tied all the train cars together so that each train car had its own air brakes at all of the wheels, you could very likely come to a much quicker stop than today's freight trains. And they don't really need to be electric in order to do this. This is something you might be able to do today, right now. I'm pretty sure Amtrak trains already do this, where each coach is equipped with air brakes in the case of an emergency stop. There might be a good reason why it hasn't spread to all freight trains that I just can't think of, so if you know, then let me know. Well, that appears to be it for this video. No, it was not Portland related, no, it was not Trimet related, but I have been thinking about it for quite a while, so just thought I'd see what you guys think. So thank you for watching this week's video, and I will see you Friday with something.